He set a small bowl of water on the porch, thinking nothing of it. Then the pigeon landed, its wings folded tight, chest heaving, and something glinted on its leg. He froze. Why would a pigeon carry this? He leaned closer. Is this even safe? His phone came up shaking in his hand, filming every second. Zoom in. A metal canister was strapped to the bird's leg, old, scratched, and far too heavy for a racing band. He swallowed hard. Who sent it? Now or decades ago? The pigeon didn't flinch. It only tapped its claws against the railing like it wanted him to notice. He reached out. His fingers hesitated, then turned the cap a quarter turn. A strip slid out, brittle, yellowed, breaking apart as it touched air. His eyes locked on two words stamped in faded ink. Warlord. His pulse jumped, his chest tightened. And what does warlord mean? He felt stupid touching it, but who wouldn't look? The phone almost slipped from his hand as he jabbed at the keypad. 911 on speaker. The line clicked, operator calm. Don't touch anything. Stay where you are. The flashing lights made the quiet street look like something out of a movie. Within minutes, Animal Control pulled up. 2 officers moved quickly, one carrying a padded box. The pigeon didn't resist as they lifted it gently inside. It only blinked, chest rising and falling in short bursts. At the clinic, an avian vet leaned close. She checked the wings, hydration, weight. Dehydrated, but stable, she said, placing a hand lightly over the bird's back. Relief for the man, at least the animal wasn't in danger. Then the real focus shifted to the object on its leg. A tech unscrewed the cap with careful turns. Inside lay the brittle strip he had seen before, cellulose, yellowed with age. Across it, faint coordinate-like numbers, and again those 2 chilling words. Warlord. As they eased the strip free, a speck dropped onto the tray. Under magnification, it wasn't dust. It was microfilm, tiny, old, and crumbling at the edges. The vet squinted at the capsule. This isn't a racing band. It's older. Pre-50s hardware, I think. They slid everything into an evidence bag, sealed it, and logged the chain of custody. Old gear. On a living pigeon, the man thought. How did it get here now? He replayed his own call to 911 in his head. Am I overreacting? The room fell quiet. Then the police radio cut through, sharp and cold. EOD is en route because of the wording on that strip. The strip and microfilm were sealed in an evidence bag, but the numbers written across it needed decoding. That's when the police called in 2 locals who knew how to read what most people would dismiss as gibberish. One was a librarian who doubled as the town historian. The other, a retired surveyor who had spent decades overlaying maps by hand. At a long wooden table in the library, they spread out copies of wartime charts. The homeowner stood behind them, arms crossed tight, trying to keep his breathing steady. The historian tapped the page. These aren't modern GPS coordinates, she said. The formatting's wrong. The surveyor nodded, sliding a clear grid overlay across the old map. See these numbers? This is a World War II grid reference, used for training ranges, not for navigation today. The man leaned in. The lines intersected on the overlay, landing squarely on a patch of green marked just outside town. A wooded knoll, still there, never developed. He swallowed. If it's a training grid, where's the site? He wanted this to be a hoax. Every fiber of him begged for it to be a prank. But the maps didn't lie, and neither did the experts. It wasn't acting like one. Click. The surveyor's pen tapped the exact spot. Right here. This is where it leads. The room was silent until the historian spoke, voice low but certain. There was a wartime guidance program rumored through this county. If this is tied to that, the site might still be there. By the time they reached the wooded knoll, the place already looked like a crime scene. Yellow police tape stretched from tree to tree, and squad cars blocked the dirt road. Officers held the line while an EOD unit unloaded heavy gear from their truck. Helmets, vests, scanners. Everything suggested they were treating this as a live threat. The team leader raised his hand. "We proceed as if it's live until proven otherwise." His voice cut through the static of radios. Nobody argued. A drone lifted off, buzzing as it climbed over the trees. The monitor screen showed thick brush hiding concrete shapes. As the drone panned lower, everyone saw them. 2 concrete vents poking out of the earth, and between them, a steel hatch half buried in dirt. Rust streaked across the surface, but it was still intact. The homeowner stood back near the line of tape, still clutching the evidence bag that once held the canister. His hand shook, knuckles white around the plastic. What did that pigeon just deliver? Directions to a hazard? He hated that this started at his porch. He hated that he was the one who touched it first. If he had tossed the bird a handful of seed and ignored it, none of this would be happening. The drone tilted sideways, camera zooming tight on the hatch surface. The operator squinted, adjusting focus. Faded stenciling appeared along the rust. He leaned in, voice dropping to a near whisper. "I've got stenciling." Faded. Looks like control or can't read the rest. The EOD team cut through brush and dirt until the hatch surface cleared. A grinding squeal echoed as the rusted hinges gave way and the steel door finally lifted. They lowered lights inside. The room was small but dry, air thick with dust that had been trapped for decades. Wooden crates lined the walls, corners softened by age. Faded stencils ran across them in black block lettering, the paint cracked and nearly unreadable. But the object in the center froze everyone. Resting on a pallet was a fiberglass and wood nose section, shaped like the front of a missile. Its face had 3 round windows, positioned side by side. One of the techs crouched, shining a flashlight through. The beam revealed a translucent screen stretched across the inner wall. On that surface were hundreds of tiny crescent-shaped pocks, clustered in uneven rows. The homeowner blinked at it, mind racing. Control, organic, animals steering. Is that real? A crate lid nearby had half a label still attached. The paper flaked as the tech brushed it, but one phrase was legible. Control, organic. The man swallowed hard. He tried to imagine 3 birds locked inside that nose, pecking at a target to steer a weapon. The thought made his skin crawl. The EOD lead stepped back, lifted his radio, and kept his voice steady. "Get a museum curator on video. You need to see this nose." The video call connected, and a museum curator appeared on the screen, adjusting his glasses as the feed from the bunker came into focus. The moment he saw the nose section, he leaned forward. "That's it. That's a 3-pigeon nose cone," he said. "The windows up front, the translucent screen, the marks inside, those aren't random. Those are peck strikes." The EOD lead tilted the camera closer, letting the light catch the scratches. The curator explained it simply. During World War II, psychologists trained pigeons to peck at moving target images projected onto screens like that. Each peck sent a signal to adjust the control surfaces of the bomb. If the bird kept pecking in the center, the bomb stayed on course. It was called Project Pigeon, later Project ORCON, short for Organic Control. Eventually, electronics replaced the birds, but for years this was a serious program. The room was silent. The curator continued, voice steady. "That microfilm you found? That's the real key. It would likely hold target silhouettes, bridges, ships, and maybe even a range sketch. If it's readable, it could confirm exactly what this site was used for." Police officers exchanged looks. The EOD lead finally spoke. "So this isn't a live warhead site. It's a guidance test bunker." The homeowner pressed his lips together. So the coordinates were a breadcrumb to a test bunker? He rubbed the back of his neck, guilt biting at him. He didn't want to be the guy who almost tossed history in the trash. On the feed, another expert, this time a conservator, stepped into view. She looked at the fragile strip on her tray. "We can try to read the microfilm," she said, "but we get one shot. The next day, an elderly neighbor knocked at the door carrying a shoebox. His hands shook slightly as he set it on the table. "I think I might have something," he said. Inside lay a stack of old photographs, edges curled from age. He pulled one free and slid it across. The picture showed a temporary pigeon loft, rough boards nailed together in a hurry. Lining the rail were half a dozen birds, each with a small metal canister strapped to its leg, identical to the one found on the porch. The man turned the photo over. On the back was a faint date stamp. Police compared it against the pencil marks on one of the crate lids from the bunker. The numbers matched. "My sister worked there," the neighbor said quietly. "Signal Corps. During the war. She fed the birds. One night, a storm rolled in, and they released dozens of them early. Some never came back." The homeowner stared at the photograph, throat dry. Could one message drift through decades and land here now? He felt a weird respect for the tiny bird that started all of this. What he thought was just another scrappy pigeon had set off something larger than he could have imagined. Before anyone could answer the question, a lab tech walked in with fresh news. His voice was careful but sharp. "Replica capsules popped up at an antiques booth last week. If someone is faking, we have to rule it out now." The story took a sharp turn when a local pigeon fancier contacted police. He reported that 2 of his birds had been stolen from their loft just days earlier. If someone had grabbed pigeons for a stunt, then maybe the canister wasn't as historic as it seemed. Investigators dug deeper. CCTV footage from a nearby feed store showed a man at the counter paying cash for small brass tubes, replicas made to look like old pigeon canisters. The tension in the room shifted. Could this all have been staged? The buyer was tracked down quickly. Confronted, he admitted it. He'd been pulling a dumb prank, hoping to get attention at a local fair. He had no idea about the porch pigeon, the strip, or the words warlord. His replicas were still in his garage. Even so, doubts lingered until the lab metallurgist weighed in. His report came back clear. The porch canister was World War II-era alloy, cut with a threading pattern that hadn't been used in decades. It was no replica. It was authentic, so the bird and the canister are the real story after all, the man thought. He let out the breath he'd been holding since the first night. He exhales for the first time all day. The room stilled again as conservators dimmed the lights and adjusted their equipment. The fragile strip and the shard of film rested in a secure mount. The monitor flickered to life. One of the conservators spoke, calm but firm. "Microfilm is mounted. Recording starts. Now." The lab lights dimmed and the scanner hummed to life. Everyone leaned closer as the first grainy frame appeared on the monitor. Black silhouettes filled the screen, naval ships, bridges, and target outlines. Training cue cards flipped one after another, each marked with alignment points. It wasn't random imagery. These were targets meant for practice, exactly the kind used to train pigeons to peck at the right shapes. Then a hand-drawn sketch filled the frame. Thick pencil lines, crude but clear, a range layout. When the surveyor overlaid it on the modern map, the grid landed exactly on the same wooded knoll they'd just excavated. The site was not an accident. It was drawn decades ago. The curator's eyes lit up on the video call. That's a match. This confirms it. A traveling guidance test outpost. No live warheads here. This was about steering. But the frames weren't finished. Another flicker, and a shipping ledger appeared, grainy numbers across the page. The date matched the stamp on the back of the neighbor's photograph. The final frame froze. 3 pigeon band numbers were typed in a row. Under magnification, the lab noticed something subtle. A faint ink transfer inside the original canister, blurred but legible. It matched one of the numbers. Did this bird complete a mission 8 decades late? The homeowner shook his head, a half-smile breaking through the tension. He smiled at how absurd and perfect that sounded. Before anyone could speak, the vet's voice came through over the radio. Calm, certain. The pigeon strong enough for release. Where should it go? A week later, townspeople gathered at the knoll. The police tape was gone, and in its place stood a small bronze plaque. It read, "Animals of War, Project O-R-C-O-N Test Site." The nose cone and crates had already been shipped to a museum for conservation. What remained was memory, and one final act. The vet carried the rehabilitated pigeon in a small cage. Everyone held their breath as the door opened. The bird hesitated, then burst into the air. It circled once above the hill, wings glinting in the sun. Then it turned sharply south, gliding in the direction where the old Signal Corps loft had once stood. Applause broke out, but the homeowner stayed quiet, eyes following until the pigeon disappeared. Days later, at dusk, he stepped onto his porch. And there it was again, the same pigeon, calm and steady, perched on the rail exactly where this began. Did it come back to the first place that listened? He felt a quiet respect for the tiny creature that had carried history on its leg. He thinks, "You've finished the job." He set down a fresh bowl of water. The bird blinked once, steady and certain. And with that, the story finally closed.
If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and consider sharing it with someone who may find it interesting. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.